Greetings and welcome to Georgian Crossroads. This is Byrne Power, and today we'll be doing another in our series of Prague Diaries, which I am running behind on, but eventually that won't matter because the people watching this won't know when I've made it. But those who are waiting for the next Georgian episode will be saying, "Hey, Byrne, what's happening in Georgia?" To which I would answer, quite a bit. Stay tuned. What we're going to do today is we are going to visit a few art museums in Prague. Now, many people come to Prague and they come to see the castle, to walk across the Charles Bridge, to see the astrological clock in the old town square, eat Czech dumplings. That's a great reason to go. And duck, yes. But most people don't think of it as a city full of art museums. And yet, there are several that are worth your time. And so what we're going to do today is look at the National Gallery at the Schwarzenberg Palace. We're also going to look at the Museum of Decorative Art and the Mucha Museum. Alfons Mucha, the Art Nouveau painter who designed, so many beautiful posters and works of art. So, let's start off at the National Gallery. This is the Schwarzenberg Palace in the Hradčanské náměstí, which is the castle square up on top of the hill overlooking Prague. This style is called sgraffito. It's an early Renaissance style, and it looks like they've drawn on the sides of the palace, but it's not drawn, it's actually carved into the stone. Many people go up there and do not go to this really amazing gallery, National Gallery. Instead, they choose to wait an inordinate amount of time to get into the castle and to spend money doing so, where you can do so for free in the evening, according to the honest guides. The gallery is mostly paintings from the 16th through 18th century. And of course, during that period, you have a lot of biblical themes. This is actually Adam and Eve, as done by Lucas Cranach, the great German painter from the Reformation era, really. Cranach has a really idiosyncratic style, and the faces he puts on the women are they're very, I wouldn't say cute, but they seem naive, and at the same time, he gives them a real darkness. There's the snake, there's Adam eating that pesky apple. And there's a head, the head of John the Baptist, sitting on a plate according to the whims of Salome, known sometimes as Salome, another Cranach painting there of Salome. And this is one of the ziggurat paintings and drawings there. I saw 3 of them, and of course these mean something to me because I did a puppet play called The Great Ziggurat, which we performed and took around America and Canada. But of course, you're going to find many biblical themes in these stories, quite interesting paintings. The Cranach is among the most famous that they have here, but it's all really telling work. Like, look at the symbols here, those pinchers that have like a golden cup in them. And here, of course, crucifixions. And one of the things I like about the crucifixions during this age is that they tend to be happening not among people who look like they're from ancient Rome, but people who look rather like they're from the 15th century or the 16th century. So many holy stories are found here in the Schwarzenberg Palace National Gallery. There are other national galleries. We'll mention one a little later. But of course, they also, during the Renaissance, did Greek and Roman mythology. And there are quite a few instances here. Now, I know a bit of Greek and Roman mythology, but not enough to immediately identify all of the images that I saw. And this is on the ceiling, looking straight up in one of the rooms there. This looks like a Venus and Cupid. There's an emphasis upon the flesh here. Now this looks like a fairly erotic picture until you get up to the face. And the face is just heartbreaking. So I am sure that there's some sort of motif or theme here, either a saint or from ancient Roman history to explain it. But I don't know who that artist was or that one. And you get these haunting faces sometimes. I think it's really fascinating to come face to face, as in this portrait, of someone from 500, 600 years ago. This is a man, this is near the end of the time period of the collection. And this is Rembrandt, and it's called Portrait of an Old Man. It's not Rembrandt himself, although he did many self-portraits. This is a Saint Jerome, who, if you look at the iconography here, there are certain things that often show up in Saint Jerome images. One is the skull. He's always got a skull there. And the skull is to ponder the meaning of death. The other is the lion. And then there is the fact that he is usually partly naked in a robe, signifying asceticism. And more saints. And biblical and Greek stories. But what I find really fascinating are the symbols. This isn't just the painting of a monkey. There are symbols going on here which are far beyond, you really have to work to understand them. Even the way the faces are posed, the directions, the angles. Or what is that cat doing there? It's not as simple as it seems. This looks like Baroque era. But, again, look at the face. The face is one, it's both of ecstasy and of pain, often. Now, this picture is really strange. I didn't really spend long enough with it to understand what the story was. And this is quite cool. This is a Wunderkammer, or Cabinet of Curiosities, one that I have a photo of in my book on the subject. But that was the real thing. That is the real painting. There are real cabinets of curiosities in Prague. Also, I found fascinating the way they used to display paintings back then. It was like this. All these paintings, you'd walk into this large room, and all these paintings would be on a wall. Now, in this case, you could imagine all these being the relatives of someone, although I doubt they're all from the same family. But what I find fascinating about these portraits, and these are real people, obviously people with money, but nevertheless, you look in their faces, and what do you see? You get bits and pieces of their character. You get, this woman's décolletage is quite low, as was the style at the end of the 17th century. And this man, you see his face, he's very serious, but then when you see him with his wife, you get a totally different view of the same image. And I just find it fascinating that we can look into the faces of people who lived 300 or 400 years ago and actually see their faces this way. It's not a photograph, but in a way it's better. A good artist can get something that a photograph simply, you have to be an excellent photographer to get that kind of a thing out of a photograph, especially these days when everyone just smiles for photographs or acts stupid and goofy. But here, there's the artist with his wife again, and that definitely looks like a self-portrait. I just find it a fascinating thing. It turns the human into something more than they would have been without the portrait. The portrait, in a sense, becomes a part of the definition of who they are. Now we're at the Museum of Decorative Arts, which is closer to the old square. Closer to the Jewish quarter, actually. And all sorts of fascinating objects. What are they? That's actually some sort of spout, drain spout. This is like a post, which then has some sort of odd golden ornamentation on it. These, I think these are more modern, but nevertheless fascinating objects of just bubbled glass. I would think they're more modern. This is an interesting sketch that was done for a theater piece, and I find these kinds of things fascinating. They had an interesting display of Japanese black dye. All of these images contain this special dye that the Japanese gets to get this ultra black fabric. And I'm just absolutely fascinated with this. I think I've been fascinated with this since I ran across a comic book with a story about a guy trying to get the most intense blacks possible. And I really like these. These are traditional Czech costumes. And then what they're also doing is comparing a Japanese black to a Czech black. And that was the Czech black. Now this is interesting. This seems to be something to do with clothing design. And I find that fascinating, that just the shape of it. I just wanted that on my walls. Just like I like this on my walls. Now, I was going to leave this museum, but on the way out, I started looking up, and the stairs leading down had the most elaborate ornamentation. Definitely Baroque era here. And so I was just fascinated to capture just a bit of a feel for ornamentation. We tend to build buildings without ornamentation anymore. Even the postmoderns really haven't discovered ornamentation. And I have books on ornamentation throughout history and around the world. And I find ornamentation is just extremely human. All the little designs that we add to walls and to surfaces and to the edges of paintings and frames and inside of books, all of these things, to windows, to ceilings. Ornamentation is something that I think we lack. Now, there was a reason why we shifted away from ornamentation. And that was because the Victorians went a little crazy, and to reject this bourgeois culture, they came up with this kind of flat, dead aesthetic. It wasn't dead in the beginning. It was quite interesting. Art Deco and Bauhaus and all of this stuff. But nevertheless, I miss the ornamentation. I wish people would bring it back. Okay, so it's time to leave the Museum of Decorative Arts. Alfons Mucha is a fascinating artist. Came into prominence at the end of the 19th century as part of the Symbolist and Art Nouveau world, and became especially famous for his posters to begin with. And he's one of the creators of the Art Nouveau style, and there's a museum just dedicated to his work. Now, not all of it is there. There is another museum in Prague dedicated to his Slav epic. And then there are other pieces I have seen, for instance, in Paris that are not here, sketches and things like that. But he became famous for his posters of the great French actress Sarah Bernhardt. And Sarah Bernhardt was an extremely eccentric person, another representative of the kind of symbolist decadent era at the last 10 years or so of the 19th century. And here she's playing Medea, and she was known for her theatrical presentation. In fact, as she got older in life, during the 1930s or so, she was wandering around America. I think she had to have a foot sawed off, but she just kept playing. And she was even in a few films, but by that time, I think it was in the teens, she was getting older. So there aren't photos of her as a younger woman. You can see, it's not so much that she's the most beautiful woman in the world, but her personality just comes straight through. And these posters by Mucha helped to create her legend. And this is obviously a poster from when she was young, but these were her favorite roles in theater. So it was Gismonda. She actually played a male Hamlet, which is kind of an odd thing to do, but she pulled it off. But Mucha was attracted to female beauty in an unusual way. There's always in his women a real sense of delicacy, a real sense of, I want to say innocence, but that's not quite the right word. But there's also, because he's Czech, even though he became famous in France, there is a sense of there's a sensuality, but also sometimes a bravery that shines through in certain photos, especially once he returns back to Prague. That comes out more and more, but we'll see some of those in a moment. But these four, for instance, are his four seasons. And I've been a Mucha aficionado for quite a few years. I think I picked up a first almost complete book of his work back in the early 1980s. And I've been keeping an eye on him since. This is actually my third time, I think, going to the Mucha Museum, but I thought I really need to capture it. The other two times I did not take a camera in. This is one of my favorites right here, because there's this wisdom, and yet there's a youthfulness, And that's very much a Slav image. That's less in his French style, more in his Slavic style. When Czechoslovakia became a country, he designed the money for it. Oh, would that people would design money like that again. There's another one. It's like innocent, and yet there's a lot more going on there than just simple innocence. It's bordering on cute, but there's something else there that fortunately saves him from the curse of cuteness. He has become more and more respected as time has gone on. One of the ways that he was really respected was that his poster style came back in a strange sort of way during the psychedelic 60s in San Francisco. And this one, you have this woman in the back crying, and then there's this young girl, and her expression is so intense. And this one's definitely, he's saying something very symbolic about the history of the Slavs, something that wouldn't be out of place in Ukraine during the war. Just this, it's beauty, but it's like this intense willingness to fight. These are just, again, his attraction to the female form is always there in his work. And yet, like I say, there's something more to it than, he's not simply doing pin-ups. Although, I will say this style eventually will lead to the pin-up. Now, near the back end of the museum, you have sketches and odds and ends of his work, and a lot of these sketches will go into his Slav epic, which you can see by going to the National Gallery, the Schwarzenberg Palace. And here's one of his paintings. This is one of the only paintings in the Mucha Museum. Everything else is a real poster from the past, but this is one of his paintings, which then goes into the Slav epic, which you can see at the other National Gallery, which is over in, I think it's Holešovice district across the river. And this is actually a building that he designed. And again, that Art Nouveau sense of ornamentation went into it. Art Nouveau, I think, the more I look at Art Nouveau, the more I am impressed by it. And that's all I'm going to say for now. So there you are. The Mucha Museum and the Museum of Decorative Art. And we started off with the National Gallery at the Schwarzenberg Palace. I hope you enjoyed that. There is more of this Prague Diary to come, but I may throw another really Georgian Crossroad episode before that. So I hope to see you again sometime, or as the Georgians say, Droebit.